The spark of an idea. A world cloaked in shadows. Nightfall was not a gentle transition, but a swallowing darkness. Streets flickered weakly under the dim glow of oil lamps, their flames fighting against the wind, sputtering in protest. Indoors, candle wax pooled into uneven mounds, drowning wicks before their time. The world moved cautiously after sunset, reading strained the eyes. Work halted prematurely, and the unseen corners of rooms whispered of unseen dangers. Light was a fragile, fleeting thing, and the weight of this limitation pressed upon a solitary mind, restless in a small workshop where papers littered every surface. The workshop of failed dreams. The air smelled of burnt metal and glass dust. On a workbench, a dozen shattered bulbs lay like fallen soldiers, some cracked from overheating, others blackened by filaments that had surrendered too soon. A hand, never seen but implied by the careful movements, adjusted a vacuum pump, its wheezing breaths the only sound in the room. Scribbled notes crowded the margins of schematics. Carbon too brittle, platinum cost prohibitive, glass seal fails at high heat. Each failure was a lesson, but time was a relentless opponent. A match struck. In its brief flare, a face might have been glimpsed. But no, the story was not about who, but what. The flame touched a candle, and the inventor watched, transfixed, as the wax surrendered to heat. Fire is a crude master, the thought came. What if light could be tamed? The first true glimmer. The idea arrived not with a shout, but a whisper. A carbonized bamboo strand, thin as a spider's thread, was coiled inside a glass sphere. The vacuum pump hissed, sucking away the air that would devour the filament too soon. Wires connected to a crude battery, its acid bubbling faintly. A switch closed. For 3 seconds, nothing. Then light. Not the angry flicker of flame, but a steady golden glow, humming with quiet defiance. The workshop, once a tomb of failures, was now bathed in something miraculous. The inventor's breath caught. This was no accident. This was a conversation with the universe. The filament pulsed, fragile but alive, and in its radiance, the shadows retreated like beaten foes. The doubt that follows triumph. But light, like all new things, was fragile. The filament blackened. The glow faltered, then darkness rushed back in. The bulb had lasted 40 seconds. 40 seconds of victory. The inventor sat back, the thrill of discovery now tempered by reality. Why did it fail? The answer was somewhere in the silence, in the still warm glass. Outside, the world continued unaware, still bound to candles and oil. But here, in this room, something irreversible had begun. The next attempt would be better. It had to be. The birth of steady glow. The bulb sat cradled in a makeshift holder, its glass belly hollowed of air, its coiled filament a fragile spine. The workshop held its breath. A switch clicked silence then, like a star winking awake, light poured forth. Not the fitful dance of flame, but a pure, unwavering glow. The shadows that had clung to the walls for decades peeled back, defeated. The inventor's hands, steady through 100 failures, trembled now. This was no accident. This was control. Light. Capture. The filament hummed, a quiet hymn to human stubbornness. The clock's cruel march. Minutes pooled like molten gold. The bulb outlasted every predecessor. 5 minutes, then 10. The workshop, once a cave of half-seen shapes, now stood revealed in stark clarity. The scorch marks on the bench, the tangled nests of wire, the dust motes drifting lazily through the beam. The inventor paced, eyes locked on the glow, as if will alone could sustain it. But science was indifferent to hope. At 18 minutes, the filament darkened at one end. A slow, sickening withering spread. The inventor lunged for the switch. Too late. A brittle snap, and the light guttered out. Darkness rushed back in, thicker now, hungrier. Autopsy of light. The bulb, still warm, was pried open with surgeon's care. The filament lay in 2 ashen pieces. Under a magnifying lens, the break revealed its betrayal. The carbon had thinned under the current's bite, grain by grain, until it severed. The inventor's pencil scratched across paper. Current too strong? Air remnant? Material impurity? Each guess was a lifeline. A new filament was shaped, this time thicker, its ends clamped tighter. The vacuum pump wheezed for an extra hour, starving the chamber of oxygen. The battery was rebuilt, its output measured drop by drop. Preparation was a prayer. Failure was the altar, the edge of dawn. The next bulb lasted 37 minutes. The one after, an hour and 12. Each attempt was a step into uncharted territory, each failure a map redrawn. Outside, the moon climbed, indifferent. Inside, the workshop burned brighter than noon. The inventor wiped soot from glass, squinted at another broken filament, and smiled. Progress was not a straight line, but a spiral, and the center beckoned. The crucible of perfection, the relentless iteration. The workshop had become a temple of precision. Glass shards from failed bulbs glittered like cursed diamonds underfoot. Each new attempt was a refinement, filaments coiled tighter, vacuum seals checked twice, electrical contacts polished to a mirror sheen. The inventor worked with monastic focus, measuring success in minutes added to a bulb's life. 10 hours, 12, 14. The numbers climbed, but the goal remained just out of reach, light that could outlast the night. A chalkboard chronicled the war, carbonized cotton too brittle, bamboo better, but inconsistent. The answer was close. It had to be. The breakthrough. Then a revelation. A new filament, carbonized to a skeletal hardness, threaded through a bulb of flawless glass. The vacuum seal held. The current, measured to a mathematical certainty, flowed smooth and steady. The switch was thrown. Light erupted, purer than before. Not the desperate glare of a dying spark, but the assured radiance of dawn. The inventor watched, motionless, as minutes stretched into hours. No flicker, no dimming. The filament burned with quiet confidence, as if it had always known its purpose. By the time the first hint of weakening appeared, the clock had circled past 13 hours. A record, a miracle. But the inventor's hands were already moving, scribbling notes, adjusting variables. Why 13? Why not 30? Why not forever? The first witness. Word had begun to leak, whispers of a madman who tamed lightning into glass. A local journalist, skeptical but curious, arrived unannounced. The inventor hesitated, then nodded. The demonstration was set for midnight. The workshop, usually a chaotic nest of half-finished ideas, was meticulously prepared. A single bulb, the finest yet, hung from the ceiling. The journalist's pen hovered over his notebook, his expression a mask of polite doubt. The switch was thrown. Light flooded the room. The journalist's skepticism melted into something like awe. He reached out as if to touch the glow, then pulled back, afraid it might vanish. "It's daylight," he murmured. The inventor said nothing. There was nothing to say. The light spoke for itself. The price of brilliance. By morning, the bulb still burned. The journalist had long since left, his notes crammed with frantic scribbles. The inventor sat alone, watching the filaments slow fade. It had lasted 22 hours. A triumph. But exhaustion weighed heavy. The inventor's eyes stung from sleepless nights, hands trembled from countless adjustments. The world outside was beginning to stir, to whisper, to want. And the inventor knew this was no longer just an experiment. It was a revolution. And revolutions demanded more than light. They demanded fire. The world alight. The journalist's article spread like wildfire. By week's end, a crowd gathered outside the workshop. Inventors, merchants, wide-eyed children pressing their noses to the glass. Inside, the bulbs multiplied, each one a tiny sun caged in crystal. The inventor worked feverishly, refining, producing, while the world outside clamored for miracles. Factories retooled overnight. Gas lamps were dismantled, their iron skeletons repurposed. Cities whispered of a future where night held no power. And still, the inventor toiled, sleeves stained with acid, fingers nicked by glass, chasing not just light, but permanence. The hidden cost. The workshop was now a relic. The real work happened in a cavernous warehouse, where machines hissed and groaned, birthing bulbs by the hundreds. The inventor paced the production line, correcting flaws with a touch here, a snapped order there. But something had been lost in the scaling. The bulbs lasted, yes, but their light was colder, sharper, lacking the golden warmth of those first fragile triumphs. One evening, the inventor slipped away, back to the original workshop. Dust motes floated in the moonlight. There, in a drawer, lay the very first bulb, blackened, broken, beautiful. A relic of solitude. Outside, The city glittered, a constellation of stolen fire. The inventor cradled the dead bulb, feeling the weight of a question. What have I done? The unseen legacy. Years blurred. The bulb spread, across oceans, into mine shafts, through the veins of hospitals where surgeons worked unhindered by shadows. The inventor's name became a footnote in textbooks, the face behind the light forgotten. But the light itself, the light endured. On a winter's night, an old woman, her hands gnarled, her back bent with age, shuffled into a tiny attic room. A child waited there, afraid of the dark. The woman smiled, pulled a cord, and light bloomed. The child's fear melted into wonder. Who made this? The child asked. The woman paused. Someone who believed the night was negotiable. Far away, in an unmarked grave, the earth hummed with the remnants of a spark. The final spark. The last bulb ever made by the inventor's hands still burned in a museum, encased in glass, a monument to its own immortality. Visitors marveled at its endurance. Over 100 years, the tour guide boasted. Never turned on. But if you pressed your ear to the display, past the hum of the crowd, you might hear it, the faintest tick of the filament, still holding, still fighting, waiting, as all things do, for the inevitable dark. But not yet, not yet.